Okay, well, hello there and welcome to Mission Unstoppable. It's been a while since we've done that. So
Yeah.
everybody, hi, welcome. Today I have a really special show. I'm really excited to introduce you to a dear friend of mine. There was a time when Eddie Tuduri, my guest here, he wanted to be famous. And while he may not be a household name to you, I guarantee that you have heard him on countless recordings or seen him sitting on his throne behind some of who's who of rock and roll history. You see, for a career musician, a sideman, a session drummer, and Eddie, for some reason, I really want to say a wise guy. You sound like a wise guy in your book. Eddie has laid down, Eddie's laid down the groove for musicians like Del Shannon, Dobie Gray, Ricky Nelson and the Stone Canyon Band, Dr. John, Ike Turner, Boxer, Ronnie Hawkins, the Downchild Blues Band, Chilliwack, Five Man Electric Band, Wahoo, Bill Champlin, remember Chicago? Marianne Faithfull, Martha Reeves, Steve Perry from Journey, Tata Vega, Ronnie Laws from Earth, Wind & Fire, Engelbert Humperdinck, Dwight Yoakam, Johnny Rivers, Freddie Fender and Charlie Rich, Michael McDonald, Jimmy Messina, and J.D. Souther. Did I say Dr. John? I did. I said him first. And Jimmy Calhoun, to name a few. He has lived a crazy life as a rock and roll drummer, filled with booze, drugs, hijinks, but always there was the music. And his latest book, Fatback, Life in the Pocket, is literally the soundtrack to Eddie's life. Welcome, Eddie Tuduri.
Thank you so much. It's so great to reconnect with
you. I know.
What you look like $1 million, by the way. You really look great.
Thank you. Thank you for an old. You didn't put for an old girl.
Didn't say that. You did.
I know you didn't say it. Yeah, thanks. Thank you so much. It's really great to have you on the show and have you back. The first time you came, we talked about the TRAP program, the Rhythm and Arts Project, but today we're going to talk about Fatback and Life in the Pocket. And I can't believe that you remembered all those people, all those times, especially being hazed out, if you want to call it that. I can't even remember half the people I went to high school with, let alone going back to 12.
Full disclosure, I took notes throughout most of my career, and most of them were angry or bitter.
No,
or they had that. Well, I did tours with a lot of people who weren't really kind or friendly, or I wouldn't exactly call them nice or loving or caring or compassionate people. They were the rock and roll bosses.
Yeah.
And some of them weren't very kind. And so the notes, when I first, while I was on the road, I'd be taking notes and saying, this is what happened. And
don't play with him anymore. Don't play with him anymore.
Over the years, I had kind of had a stack of this stuff. During the pandemic, I thought, I picked them, I took them out from under the couch and read them and said, wow, this is a story, a long story. And if I could clean it up and not be so bitter, possibly I could tell these stories. But the thing about that is, and I spoke to other authors, when you're telling the truth and there are people to corroborate that, then it's all right.
Yeah.
You don't need to be mean, but
No.
You can't tell the truth.
You weren't mean at all. And it didn't come across as angry. It just came across as real. It came across as real. And that's what was so really great about it.
You don't want to slight the truth in that, nor do you want to slight the integrity of the other people who experienced that same ordeal.
It boggles the mind that you could play with somebody and then walk up to them a week later, even an hour later, and they go, who are you? Like, to not even be noticed. And, it's something that women get a lot, especially as they get older, because there was a time, you walk in a room and people look at you, and then you get to a certain age and nobody looks at you anymore. And it's like, you become invisible. And as it felt like that to me when you were playing with some of these people, that you were just invisible. You were just, a drum track and
sort of on the payroll. And,
yeah, that was it. Yeah.
Yeah. I never could look at music that way. It was too important and it was too emotional.
Yeah.
For than to just say, this is a gig. I always put my heart in it. And, I think here's something I think I mentioned in the book, is that you may not, or it's my next book. You may not, my next book's called Drum Lessons.
Cool.
And I'm working on that now, but it's about my life, my life lessons as in the profession I was in. Where did I learn to grow up, and how did I learn anything? It was always from that business. So, but the point is that there are many times when I would be called for a gig and I would say, you know what? I know this guy, Marty Farah, he'd be way better than I am for that gig, or any number of people. And I think that kind of integrity is really important. Although I'm not sure anybody really respects it. It doesn't matter. I'm still going to be that person, There's a lot of
I don't know. I didn't feel that as you were talking and writing, I didn't feel like you weren't the right person for the gig. I felt that you just didn't feel that you were up to the standard that you set in your mind, of some standard that you set in your mind that you probably were up to. Everybody else recognized it because they called you, but you didn't feel you had the chops for whatever reason. Maybe because you were self-taught, maybe because you saw other people, you go, oh, they're really good, but you were really good too.
Oh yeah, I've come to terms with that. I mean, I think,
but it's an important point because I want other people to understand that too. We all look at other people. The grass is always greener. Everybody's always better than us. That kind of attitude, but it's not necessarily true. And when you're 60 and you go to people and you say, "What did you think of my playing here? What did you think?" Be honest. Give me your, your feedback. Usually they'll tell you it was great, or it was, not how you see yourself.
No one ever told me I didn't play well.
Yeah.
People have said maybe there'd be, and I've said, I think this guy would be better. When I played with Rick Nelson, Rick was great. The band was family to me. It wasn't my cup of tea.
Yeah.
And Jimmy Calhoun.
Yeah.
Jim was a bass player, a real funky, incredible guy, and my best friend. And he would make fun of me because we did a bunch of TV shows, and there's one dinosaur show with Rick Nelson where we played Hello, Mary Lou.
Yeah.
And, that is a doom, Mary Lou. Boom. And I was playing Hello, Mary Lou. And Rick was so nice. He never really yelled at me about it. Dennis, on the other hand, I'd give me dirty looks every night. You can't really do that to. I mean, Rick finally said, "Eddie, I was wondering if you wouldn't mind quitting." He said, "Because I don't want to fire you," but he said, "Hello, Mary Lou is starting to sound like a James Brown tune." And I said, "I know, Rick, I'm sorry. I never did see you getting on the good foot either."
Yeah.
So,
yeah. It makes me think of Neil Young when he told his drummers, you can't do fills.
Take you what?
He said, his drummers, you can't do fills. Neil Young, right? It's hard. You want to play. It's your instrument, right? You hear things in your head and you want to do things, but for somebody to music,
he's so basic in his musically. I mean,
yeah,
he shouldn't take solos ever.
He shouldn't sing either. Probably not. That's another story. But he's famous, right? He's famous. Yeah, we can't talk about people like that. But yeah, I mean, that's the thing. You want to be expressive, and you were in the wrong. Great people, wrong band, but great people.
Yeah.
And that, and it's like having a job, and your values and everything are there. And do you stay because you love the family? Like in a marriage, sometimes you stay in a marriage because you love the family, right? You love the other people in the family, not your partner. And sometimes you just go because you go.
Yeah.
It's interesting. But you started really young. You started taking drum lessons 8 or 9. I think you said your dad put you in drum lessons.
9 years old.
9 years old. And your family background was Spanish and Italian?
My father was from Spain, my mother from Italy.
Yeah. So you've got this hot-blooded.
Yeah. Hot sauce, maybe.
Hot sauce, yeah. And So the hijinks started young, you and your friends. You actually became a hairdresser, like what, to go with your buddy and pick up girls? Is that
What was that?
you became a hairdresser? You took hairdressing just to hang out with
Oh man, yeah. My friend Gucci. Gucci was the real Fonz, right? I mean, if that character was
personified?
crafted after anyone, it was Gucci DeRosa. He was amazing. Everybody loved him. He was also the toughest guy in town. He was everything the Fonz would have us believe.
Right.
Everybody loved him. Parents loved him. Everybody did. All us kids. He was 3 or 4 years older, and we all looked up to him. And I was working in a new car preparation place, pulling freeze plugs out of engine blocks in the middle of the winter. And this guy, Blair Fazzino, who was a guy who was a hairdresser, in those days, it wasn't, it wasn't a heterosexual gig.
Yeah, it wasn't manly.
Now, thank God, people are not there, not especially not. But he came in one day. I was changing the oil in his new car, and I remember he knocked on the hood, and I rolled out on my creeper, and I said, "What do you want?" That's how we spoke to each other, a little bit dirtier than that. But
yeah,
I said, "What are you doing?" He says, "What are you doing?" I said, "I'm changing the oil in your brand new car." And I was a mess, and he had a shark skin suit on and everything. He was making like $250 a week in the 60s.
Yeah, that was a lot of money.
Yeah. So he said, "You're not going to believe this, but Gucci is down at the hairdressing place in town. He's becoming a hairdresser." I said, "Blair, come on. You must be kidding me." He said, "No, honestly, Gucci DeRosa is becoming a hairdresser." On my lunch hour, I ran down there in my battery-eaten pants and all.
Yeah.
And there he was, standing on the steps of the Valley Academy of Beauty Culture in Ansonia, Connecticut. And he's smoking a cigarette, and he's spotless. So I parked my car, and I ran up, and I said, "Gucci, with all due respect, excuse me, what are you doing?" He said, "Come here." I said, "All right." So I walked over, put his arm around me. He said, "Look in there." Now, inside, this was an old bank building. So where all the tellers were stations, right? And it had an aisle down the middle and like that. So it was full of women, all women. And all the students were women too. He put his arm around me. She says, "Look in there." She said, "You see that?" I said, "Yeah, Gucci, I see that." And she said, "You see all them broads?" I said, "Yeah, I see them." And she said, "Look at me." He said, "Now take a look at yourself. Let me see your fingernails." You don't question.
You're on a car, yeah.
He says, "You're a mess. Look at you." He said, "Well, look at me." He had spit shine shoes. He said, "I just got a manicure," And he just laid it out. I went home to my little Italian mother and said, "Ma, I'm gonna be a hairdresser." She said, "Oh, figure me." Oh. So I said, "No, Ma, it ain't like that." I said, Gucci is he going to be a hairdresser? I'm going to go to school with him. So it's just like Mrs. C.
Yeah.
Richie, Oh, Gucci's doing it? Well, okay then.
Yeah.
Be
Like you have
okay.
no merit on your own, but Gucci, yeah, go for it.
So the next day I signed up, and I only did it for, the school, the period of time we spent in school was really fun.
Did you graduate?
I'm sorry?
Oh,
yeah.
Oh, good.
Yeah, it worked. I kept my license up for years, even though I was cutting hair up. I can still cut hair.
Nice.
But I couldn't do that and play. I was playing drums.
Yeah.
And as soon as my drumming was enough, I that's all I ever did. I was working 3 nights a week in New York and driving back and forth. And, it got to be too much. You'd have to be at the salon at 8 o'clock, 7 o'clock in the morning, and do 30 old ladies and permanents and comb out
Roller sets every
all that.
Saturday.
I really had a great time, and being at Guzzi and there were very few straight men, and so we use your imagination. We had a lot of fun together. We
Yeah.
went to big hairdressing shows, and it was like taking candy from a baby. I don't know if I should say.
I love it. I love it. So,
Really.
but drumming was your life. Drumming was your passion. Drumming was everything. And so
I always played.
let's talk about the first gig that you got. I think you said you got a gig at 12 or something. Was it a wedding?
Yeah, with the Eddie music company. They were doing a wedding, and they couldn't find anybody. I'm from Derby, Connecticut. There's like 3 people there, and not really. Derby's great, but there's not a lot of folks there, not a lot of musicians. And so I was taking lessons, and the guy heard about me, and he said, I think this kid can cut it. And I did. I was ready for it. My dad had to help me and drove me there and helped me set up and all that. But I did a wedding when I was 12 years old.
Wow.
And
And the next big gig.
after that, I mean, when you're first starting, you're a drummer, you know what that's like. You get together with whomever, and just play every day if you can. I mean, I had my parents soundproof the basement. It's the first thing they did, and then as I showed them that I was going to really take this seriously, I got better drums. They were very smart about that.
Yeah.
And then we had a couple of kids in the neighborhood who played guitar, so we knew the song, the theme song to Peter Gunn.
Yeah.
Right, so we would play that song for like 3 hours, and my parents kept the door shut and thought, but I mean, that's how every kid gets started, I think.
That's right.
And then you take it out of the basement into the block dances and high school gymnasiums where it sounds awful, but that's it. Then I started backing up singing groups, and one thing led to another. By the time I was 17, I was on the road.
So tell us about that first road experience.
Well, I was playing with a group called Cannibal and the Headhunters. Well, there was a local band that they hired to do this East Coast tour, which was basically Connecticut, Massachusetts, Pennsylvania, and then New York and New Jersey. And we played at all these really incredible places, and we had to dress up in suits, and they did dance steps. And that band had a record in that year called Land of 1,000 Dances. And people don't remember Cannibal and the Headhunters, but they remember na 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 na.
Yeah.
Na, 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 na. So they opened for the Beatles at I think it was Stadium, and they were doing. They had the #1 record in the country. So we did 3 or 4 months of clubs, but not real high class clubs, New York and Boston and everywhere we went, and then we finished with 10 days at the Murray Decay show at the Brooklyn Fox. Wilson Pickett was a headliner, and it was basically an R&B show. And Cannibal was an R&B band. Everything else we did was R&B. And they had a couple of, Murray Decay always brought English bands. He really championed the Beatles when they first came. And so we had the Moody Blues and the Fortunes, and Peter and Gordon, Peter Asher, Peter and Gordon. And then we had, Wilson Pickett was the headliner. He had Midnight Hour, and then we had 3 other.
Asher just did an album with Kate Taylor, I think, last year. I think he maybe did an album with Kate Taylor last year. Asher.
Oh yeah, he does everything. He's
Yeah, like James Taylor's sister, Kate Taylor. I think she sends
Mhm.
me Christmas cards. Little
Oh yeah.
these little ornaments every year she sends them. It's really cute. Yeah. Mm.
Yeah, James Taylor's band is the cream of the crop. I mean, oh my God,
The best, the best, the
yeah.
best show ever. Yeah, so good.
Luis Conte is part of the Pockets band. That's his percussionist. And the rest of them are all Jimmy Johnson. They're all
Everybody you played with are amazing musicians. Like just the names that are coming out, I'm going, oh yeah, 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 yeah. And it's like, wow. It was
yeah.
such a great time to be a musician. Such an amazing time. The music was fresh and new, and people were just writing the best stuff. Yeah, I mean, you guys were out of your head, stoned, but that's okay, like
Most of the time, yeah. But
it was a time. It was an
I've
era.
been I, I've been sober for 38 years, so there's been a lot of
Yeah.
great music in sobriety too.
But it's interesting to see all of you guys, in your 20s and now in your 70s.
Yeah.
It's fun to see how people age and change, but playing is still your life, right? Like people still, the music's always there. You don't
The
lose it.
drums are right in the next room. And people come over here and play. I still do gigs, but now I decided that I don't want to stay out till midnight or 1 o'clock in the morning.
Yeah.
Because of my disability, I can't really lift things, so I always need to get a lot of help. I do benefits, but what we're doing now, and part of the same guys I usually work with, we're playing at schools or within facilities for people with that are medically fragile and or developmentally or intellectually different. So it's the best audience in the world. I mean, I've played from Madison Square Garden to the Forum to the Houston Astrodome. The audiences don't compare with a room full of children
Yeah.
with disabilities.
Yeah. Those kids are amazing. I remember being in Toronto when you did a show in Toronto with them, and the smiles, the love, it was incredible. It really is just like, there's nothing like it. I mean, look behind you. Look at that smile, that little girl behind you.
Oh, yeah. That's Michaela.
Yeah, just beautiful, just beautiful. And, well, let's go there. Okay, life before and life after. So life before your surfing accident was all crazy, but life after. So you had a surfing accident, you broke your neck, you're paralyzed, you're a drummer. You're laying on a stretcher going, nothing works. Whoa, my life. Now you told me you were ready to go at that point. Either way,
I woke up in the ICU after the operation. The thing that happened underwater is a near-death experience that's really hard to articulate. But I was 20 yards out. I'll tell you the short version. I was 20 yards out, 3 feet underwater, and totally paralyzed from the neck down. There was no way I was getting out of that. But I was lifted from the bottom and placed at the shore where the lifeguard with the most seniority showed up, then the paramedics with the most seniority, and they rolled me into the hospital to the #1 neurosurgeon on a Saturday afternoon. He said, I'll take this guy. And they did an emergency operation. This is a series of events.
this is God.
Like dominoes falling into place, right? And when I woke up in the ICU, I kind of woke up and went, okay, I'm just a head. And I started laughing.
Yeah.
I have eyes, I can see, I can blink my eyes, and I can wiggle my ears, and I can talk. That's good. That's a lot. That's what I thought.
That's an amazing thought. Most people would have panicked.
I never, ever had any fear or depression or none of that ever happened. When I was in the hospital, I was there for a couple of weeks after surgery, but then I went to a rehab for about 6 weeks. And in there, they thought that I was delusional, and they sent the psychiatrist in to say, Eddie, you're going to have to deal with this. You're totally paralyzed. You're probably going to live in, you're a quadriplegic. I said, it's okay, don't worry, because I'm going to be fine. I said, I know you guys don't see that, but just relax. I'm going to be okay. And they sent the psychiatrist in and said, man, you're going to have to deal with this. I said, well, you're going to have to deal with the fact
me getting better.
I'm going to be okay,
Yeah.
Then a few weeks later, she was sending patients in to me because I started moving and things started. My attitude never changed.
Isn't that funny? We both had the same thing happen.
I've listened to you for the last couple.
But at rehab, they sent people to me.
Yeah.
Crazy. Crazy.
Wow.
Attitude is everything. Attitude is everything.
Yeah. I totally agree. And
how amazing. What a story. And you know that it was God's hand. You know that because of what happened after. Trap was born, right? The Rhythmic Arts Project
was born the moment my neck snapped. I knew it. I didn't know where it was going to.
But how did that leap happen? How did that leap happen? I'm going to use drums, and I'm going to teach intellectually challenged young people.
I didn't know in the beginning.
Yeah. But how did that emerge?
When I was in the hospital, this hand came back first. Otherwise, I was lying flat, nothing.
We're going to give this a minute because I know his computer will come back. If you can hear me, Eddie, I'm waiting for you to come back. Can you imagine that you're paralyzed and your hand doesn't work? Wow, nothing works. And then you feel a hand come back. Oh, he's gone. He's going to come back though. I'm going to let our guest in. He doesn't know about him.
I'm right here.
Are you coming back?
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
You didn't hear me. You didn't hear me. I was going to get a pair of drumsticks.
Oh, okay. Because I got a friend here. You can come on camera.
Oh.
Look who's here.
Oh, no. Oh, man. How you doing, pal?
I'm doing well.
Hi, Jimmy.
Oh, happy to see you.
It's been a while. Let me introduce you. Jimmy Calhoun is a really good friend. He started his musical career with Leon's Creation, and he went on to be playing for Sly Stone's production company, Stoneflower. He played with Dr. John, Rare Earth, Buddy Miles, Brian Auger, and the Oblivion Express. You've got 4 books now: Funknology, Love and Grace, The Art of God, and The Story of Rhythm and Grace, which was by far one of my most favorite books. You are ordained in the International Church of Foursquare Gospel in Austin, Texas. You're married to a beautiful lady, Julene, and you are passionate about building bridges where spatial division and social segregation exist. And I just love that. You're also the best man at Eddie's wedding. Short
I actually taught him everything he knows. So whatever he says from now on.
So I thought I have to invite Jimmy because, like,
oh, this is great.
Like your story wasn't enough. We need to punch it up a little bit. No, just
yeah.
Jimmy, you look good.
Oh, thank you.
Good. Yeah. Well, I'm really, really glad that you were able to join us. I'm sure that you have some stories. Were you able to read the book yet? Eddie's latest book, Life in the Pocket?
I've read parts of it.
Oh, you did?
Was there any truth?
Did you read the part about us, about you and me? Jimmy, can you hear me?
I'm terribly sorry. I'm having difficulty hearing.
Oh, sorry. Eddie asked you if you've read the parts about him and you and him.
No, not yet. I'm excited to get there and see and that way I can see which version Every event made it to the,
There's
to
two
the
versions of the
page.
truth, right? Or three, they say. That's funny. That's
I
so
can't, I can't say that, I can't talk about that live,
none of
you
it.
know, our story.
We'll talk about a story. I'm sure you got more than one story.
No, I'm kidding. I'm kidding. Jimmy and I can talk about anything. It's called the dog argument. The
That was a
chapter.
good one. That was a good story.
Yeah, that's not the Jimmy and I. We love pit bulls, and it was one of those silly things like my dog is better than yours, and that went on for I don't know how many years. But we always laughed about it, but we always argued too. Until I got Bach, who was, hands down the best pit bull God ever created. So, and Jimmy agreed after a while. So we put that to bed.
After you
Well,
went to jail.
may I insert a story, a dog story?
Yeah, please.
Now, I met Eddie through, and it was a fortunate set of circumstances. You mentioned Sly, and I had just come down to Los Angeles, and I was sitting at this place called The Chronicle, and that's where I met Eddie. And I made the decision not to go back to San Francisco or to Santa Cruz where I was living. And Eddie and I would see each other once or twice a week, down at the club and sit down, hey, how you doing, hang out. Well, I lost my apartment, and for a while I was in my car, sleeping in my car. And I didn't know that I was on Eddie Street. So, or in close proximity to where he lived. So
You dropped me off.
Huh?
You brought me home that night from the club.
Oh,
I got
okay.
out of the car and went in the house, and you slowly drove down the street.
Oh, is that what happened? Okay.
Yeah. So I looked. You had that Lincoln, right?
Well, it was a Chrysler. You're close.
Chrysler, but it was big enough to live in.
Big.
It was a boat. Yeah.
Yeah.
They
And
all were back then.
so he went down the street, and I was like, I went out and looked as he's going very slow. He's looking for a place to park. So he pulled over and parked, and he was going to sleep in his car. Go ahead.
Oh, okay. So I get a knock on my window, and he invites me to go to stay in his house with another drummer, this really cool cat named Dennis. And so we're there for a few months, and there was this dog that lived around
Sykes.
the corner named Sykes. It was a bull terrier.
Uh-huh.
Now you have to see, the bull terrier was a Spuds MacKenzie dog. It's all white, with a very long snoot. And I asked Eddie, what kind of dog is that? He goes, it's a pit bull.
Don Cherry's dog.
So I file that in my memory, and so now I know what a pit bull is, because I never heard of him before. I made the decision to buy one. And I looked in the Los Angeles Times, which LA had to be 9 million people at the time.
Yeah.
And I could only find a breeder in Ventura. So I drive all the way up to Ventura and pull on this guy's ranch and this guy's property. And I see these dogs come over, and I go, those aren't pit bulls, to myself. And he shows me his dogs. I said, well, I thought you had pit bulls. He goes, these are pit bulls. So Eddie talked about my penchant for arguing, because Eddie had told me what a pit bull is. And I trusted Eddie's judgment emphatically. I mean, once Eddie says something, I believe it 100%. I start arguing with a guy that he doesn't know what he's talking about, his own dog. So he finally takes me into his house and shows me the AKC papers. That's the only way I believed him.
That was an English bull terrier, not a Staffordshire. Yeah.
But the upshot of that story is I bought 2 of them, and
Oh,
Eddie
wow. Nice.
We wound up sharing dogs, I think, or something.
Was yours an English bull terrier too, or it was a?
I beg your pardon?
No, we had pit bulls.
Yeah, pit bull.
A Staffy, and then a Staffordshire Terrier.
Yeah.
And then I had I got married. Jimmy was the best man in my wedding, and for a wedding gift, he bought Linda and I a pit bull
Oh, sweet.
named Ruby.
Well,
Ruby,
Sweet.
she was amazing. And then I got Bach later on. After Ruby was a couple of years old, we went to a breeder, and because we had bred her, and we had a lot of puppies, like 7 or 8 puppies.
Wow.
We didn't know what to do with them, and there was a great breeder up in Summerland. So I said, well, let's take them up there. He promises he'll get them a good home and blah, blah, blah. So I get up there with all the dogs. He's waiting for me. He says, put them over there in that kennel with all the other puppies. So I went over there, and Linda and I went over there, and we're putting the dogs in the kennel. And here was this white pit bull staring up at me.
Oh.
And I said to Linda, she said, you're not going to do that. I said, I'm sorry, I have to take this dog. I mean, this is, I don't have any choice. I have to take this dog. And then I picked him up, and she looked at him. She said, oh, all right, I'm not. Oh, so that's how Bach happened, but we just had this funny give and take about pit bulls for the next 10 years,
Love it.
And we were arguing that night in the car, and when I got arrested. You remember that, Jimmy?
No comment.
Yeah, okay.
Okay, we got to read the book because it's a really funny story.
Okay.
You got to read the book. It's a really good story.
I wouldn't you have to respect that Jimmy is a pastor. He's
Yeah. No, I know. But you know what? Like, that was a great story. And the fact that you guys can get into an argument like that and what happened is crazy.
Yeah.
That's just nuts. So I love it. I love it.
When Jimmy first became ordained, is that correct?
Yeah. Yeah.
We would still talk. I was still talking to him like he was, one of my best
Well, he's
friends.
still a real guy.
Yeah. And then one day he said to me, he probably doesn't remember, he says, I'm a pastor, right? And I said, so I can't speak to you that way? And he said, well, you can speak to me any way you want.
You're still a musician. I mean, the music doesn't ever go away, does it, Jimmy?
I'm sorry?
The music never goes away. Like, once a musician, you're a musician.
It seems so. I think it's a life journey, from beginning to end. It was inputted and it never can go away. Yeah.
Yeah. It's just one part of who you are.
Yeah.
But I just want to reiterate though, your books are fabulous. And I think I really hope people go and read them. Really, really good.
They're inspirational. They're I don't know what, I called them after the first book and said, well, who wrote this? I mean, it's so, you're a brilliant writer.
Yeah.
Really.
What I loved about Rhythm and Grace was that people in rock and roll, there was no racism in when you're playing the music. That didn't exist in the music. And that was what was really cool, because, musicians would go to the South and they'd experience, segregation and all kinds of stuff. But when you're playing the music, it just didn't exist. That's really cool.
Yeah. Well, I mean, Eddie was a big part of both the rhythm and the grace. And he showed grace because he took this guy he barely knows from Santa Cruz, California, with flaming hair and, welcomes him into his home, and
hard to imagine that hair now, Jimmy.
There's not very many people who would have done that under those circumstances.
Yeah.
And, he's never really changed as far as that goes, as far as his willingness to help people and seeing a need and filling it. And to this day, I'm still learning from him.
Yeah, we talked about life before the accident and life after the accident.
Oh, you did? Okay.
Yeah. And Eddie's Eddie, but where this idea after the accident came to work with children, developmentally challenged, beautiful children with, using percussion, it was brilliant. But you never thought of that before the accident, right, Jimmy or Eddie? That wasn't.
No, no, it was divinely guided from the moment my neck snapped. I have no doubt about what happened, and it happened the way I felt it happened. There was no other explanation. There is no other explanation. And, we were beginning to speak when Jimmy came on about how it started in the hospital. And it did start in the hospital.
And you got your sticks. Okay.
Yeah, well, you can't hear anything on Zoom, but
Yeah, you can. Let's play. Hit your desk. Yeah, we can hear that.
okay. So this hand came back, and my friend Greg Leroy brought me some. I said, bring me some drumsticks and some shakers, and which he did. And from on the railing on the side of my bed, the first thing I did was yeah, I still got it. I'm only a hand, but
You're more than a head now. Now you're a hand and a head.
yeah, I'm a head and a hand.
Yeah.
So one thing led to another. I asked the fellow who was watching, the aide in our spinal cord ward, I said, can you just do on my food tray, just do it with your hands.
Yeah.
He said, yeah, I can do that. And he did it. And then a little old lady from the other side of the ward rolled in. She said, Eddie, I want to play. And we had a cowbell. Don't ever bring the cowbell to the hospital. We gave her the cowbell, and I said, just play 1 and 2. So
Yeah.
we'd have
Quarter notes.
1 and 2. And then,
Yeah.
so she couldn't quite get it. The guy next to me, who was really in the worst shape of any of us, and I was totally paralyzed, he was in bad shape. He said, I can play. He was lying flat. I said, put the cowbell on his chest and give him a stick. And he played the part perfectly. So we had.
Now you had a band. Yeah.
So Edith said, but Eddie, I still want to play. So I said, just clap. Which she did. And the doctors and nurses and people came in, everybody was loving it. I thought they were going to throw me out.
No,
But,
they loved it. It was great therapy.
Everybody loved it. And, a few weeks later, when I got into a wheelchair, still not able to walk and no left side, we started going to the mat room, a room full of people. And by that time, everyone had sent congas and bongos and shakers, and
Wow.
every company sent stuff, thousands of dollars worth of stuff.
Fantastic.
That hospital's still full of percussion today.
That's awesome.
So we had a circle of people. I never did a drum circle. I don't know how to do that. I have friends that do that, and it's a fun activity.
Yeah.
But what we did is the first thing I did was ensemble, so that people had to think, all right, this is my part,
Mm-hmm.
and this is my part, and this is somebody else's part, and we had all these different instruments. So that's basically what we did. And what happened was all the therapists, the physical therapists, the recreational therapists, speech therapists, occupational therapists, everybody found a way to use the drums to integrate their methodology, their therapy into existing goals. And they were using, like they'd say, all right, some people who were having trouble with balance would stand up and play a conga. Others would shake a shaker over their head or around their body. We use that as a prepositional concepts in the rhythmic arts project later on. But all this stuff started in the hospital addressing hospital goals. So we were looking at range of motion, focus, memory, attention, balance, those kind of things, and having fun.
Yeah.
It's making a lot of noise in the hospital. So that was fun.
Yeah.
When I got out of the hospital, I stayed at the hospital for almost 3 years. It worked. What happened, Libby Whaley, who was the director of recreational therapy, and the lady who really championed the Rhythmic Arts Project, sold it to the hospital, to the hierarchy, and had it approved, and it became known as rhythm therapy in the hospital. When I left the hospital, started getting attention from elsewhere and other facilities, I couldn't call it rhythm therapy. So I remember Libby and I thought the Rhythmic Arts Project. I don't know if I would have called it that years later, because it's more of a learning. That's why I call it trap learning now.
Let's move forward for a second. Well, before we go there, okay, so you're in South America, you're in Ecuador. The program went everywhere, right?
Yeah, Middle East.
So we know that was had a divine hand, and I'm wondering and considering the cancer. You had throat cancer. Was there something you weren't saying? Just curious.
Was there something I wasn't saying? About what, dear?
I don't know. Sometimes they say, spiritually, things attack your body because. Just wondering.
It didn't resonate with me. All the other stuff was okay.
Yeah.
I have sleep apnea too. That's worse than any of that.
Yeah.
Because it's ongoing. It's 24/7. So, but the cancer, when I got cancer, I sat on the edge of my bed and where I speak to God and said, I don't understand. I understand everything else, and I'm, but this one's throwing me, and I'm not sure why it's happening. But if it's time, and I had 22 years into my current state at that point, and I said, "Can I go now? Let's go right now." I'm so grateful. I've had the best life, really, and. If that's what this is about, then let's go. I'm happy. I'm grateful and I'm happy. Let's go. Well, 3 days later, I got a call. I said, no, if, and then I said, if to God. And I said, but if I don't know if I'm done with this assignment. So I think I could use a few more years, but it's up to you. Otherwise, and I honestly closed my eyes and said, let's go right now. And it didn't happen. 2 days later, I got a phone call saying, you're probably going to live. It hasn't metastasized. And, you're going to have to deal with the recovery, but that was it.
What do you think that was about, that cancer? Just random?
What? I'm sorry?
What do you think that was about, the cancer?
I don't have an explanation for that. The other stuff I do. I mean, my broken neck, I think that all of that and the recovery and paralysis, the disability, all of it had to do with my lot in life, which now had become working in this field with people who are much farther away than I am, both physically and mentally. And I think I came back to this state, which is well enough to get all around the world and teach people this. But that made sense to me. Okay, I'm totally paralyzed because when I work with someone in a wheelchair or another quadriplegic, I actually know what they felt.
Yeah.
I'm
gonna give you my theory as a coach. Now I'm going to take my other hat as a life coach. You started this program saying you were really angry with a lot of people in your past life. Things, you said things in the book and you talked about people and you were kind about it, but you were angry with people. And that book wasn't written till after cancer. And like I said, there was things you needed to say. And you said
the notes were written before that.
The notes were written before, but you didn't put it out there.
No, I never did.
Now you did.
Yeah,
you have to be stopped. Sometimes you get stopped so that you can do things. You know,
Maybe so. I don't know.
It's just a theory.
The cancer thing
What do you think, Jimmy?
put me in a new phase of my life. I could, you know. I'm sorry. Go ahead, Jimmy.
Well, I hardly know where how to jump in as far as Eddie goes. You know, about the anger. The music business side of it would make anybody angry. I mean, there's a lot of, especially at the time that he and I came of age, because it was embryonic. Nobody really knew what to do or how to cope with this number of people who became talented people. All of a sudden were in their 20s and wanted to record and tour and do all these things. They were used to a very, you know, small number before the Beatles hit. Mm-hmm. And so all of a sudden, even the quote professionals didn't know what to do. And they were not only making it up, but making mistakes as they went along. And a lot of us got hurt. You know, there was so that anger was not restricted to Eddie. A lot of us were able to participate in that.
Yeah.
But through it all, I will say that there's a beauty. Music ultimately is something to be given away, like love. And, you know, very few people get to experience both of them, to give away music and give away love. And Eddie's been one of them. And about 11, 12 years ago, Eddie came to Austin, and he was putting on I don't know whether you call him a clinic or having a teaching series at this Roman Catholic church up the road from my house. And so he called and said, will you come and help facilitate? And that was just in order to have somebody there to move drums around, do that kind of stuff, not speaking or anything, not doing anything like that. And I expected there to be 5 or 10, maybe 12 people there. And then, but all of a sudden these cars kept buses pulled up with more and more people. And I realized that there was this hidden minority back there that nobody really saw. These people who were usually called special needs or disabled, whatever vocabulary you're comfortable with. So as a result of that, I watched Eddie that day, and he gave away his program to me, only I didn't use drums, I used guitars. So we started going around to these facilities and taking guitars, detuning them, and letting people, and tuning them in such a way where they almost sounded like chords, and have 5, 6, 10 people play guitars at the same time. And like Eddie said, they learned ensemble, they learned all these things, but it came from him. And I after 5 or 6 years of doing it, I said, man, I got to give you some royalties. He goes, no, he says, only one time that there was this one facility, they kind of kept the program after I left. That's the only time in all these years I've had a bad experience. Wow. But that's not really true of the music business. If you get a lick, you got to keep it to yourself because somebody will steal it. But Eddie was kind enough and loving enough to.
What is it? You give a word, you get a third?
Yeah.
Well, I want to say this before the end of the show, because I think it's really important. Eddie, you know, you've been recognized. You know, you started in 1979 with Save the Children in Canada and the US. In 1990, the US Committee for UNICEF named you the Volunteer of the Year. In 1997, you founded the Rhythmic Arts Project. In 98, you were voted the local hero by Santa Barbara Independent and Volunteer of the Year by the Rehabilitation Institute of Santa Barbara. In 2002, you received a citation award for therapeutic recreation. In 2004, Eddie won the prestigious Editor's Achievement Award for Modern Drummer magazine for outstanding contribution to the drum percussion community. 2005, the California Governor, we're getting chills, California Governor Award. You presented the Michael Landon Award for accurately portraying people in disabilities in the media. In 2009, you received the Citizen for Peaceful Resolution Earth Charter Award for Education. 2010, the Muriel Anderson Award for Life Alliance Award for supporting music education and providing instruments to children who might not otherwise have them. In 2012, Drumsmith Alliance for the Percussive Arts gave you the Eric A. Berquist Award for Excellence in Education. I mean, that is quite an achievement, I think. And congratulations on being recognized in that manner. I think it's really, really evident how people, they notice, they see it. You've done something absolutely incredible. And so you wanted to be famous, and maybe, you weren't famous in the household for the drums, but I think that you are definitely famous in the households of these children of these parents and these kids who go on and still love you after all these years. So congratulations on that.
Thank you.
You okay?
Yeah. I just, when I wrote my take on the book, I said something about the only place I'm a household name would be in the doghouse. And that's how I feel about it, in respect to the music.
I'd rather be in the doghouse. There's dogs there.
For me, and then the definition of success for us is that we were able to pay the rent and usually have at least a roof over our house. I lived in cars and vans and motorhomes too, but I always had a roof over my head, whatever that may be. And I played with everybody I could possibly play with, and did everything I possibly could in the business, and throughout the drug abuse and all the addiction and the craziness and attitudes and all that. People like me who managed to, come out the other end alive and reasonably well, and having had accomplished something after all these years, though nobody will ever know who we are, really. That is my definition of success. And certainly, if you look at what musicians have done in the world to heal the world, to heal everything, inanimate objects to babies, to countries, to entire races, what we've done as a whole, as a group. And we don't know who all those people are. We only know who
it's true. I mean, I look at my 6 months in rehab, and who was on my play tape? It was Nora Jones, Train, different bands that they just got me through. They got me through, a horrible time. Without them, I don't know what would have happened if I didn't have the music.
In the rehab in Santa Barbara, I put a band together called the Rehab Rhythm Rockers.
I love it.
It was great. Everybody came. A lot of drummers came, really great guys. Jimmy Messina played with us. Don Perry and Marty Farah came up, and just everybody drove up from LA. You would have been there, Jimmy. You didn't live here then, but it was really fun. And we had it was on Wednesday afternoons. The whole hospital would come out in the day room, and then we would play. And most people were in wheelchairs, so we called it butt dancing, because yeah. And everybody was smiling, and you could see what music does for everybody. Totally. And the nurses were dancing, and the doctors were, we were playing rock and roll in the hospital. So, it's a magic thing.
The show's called Mission Unstoppable, and you were and you are unstoppable. And I think it's really great what you have given to the world, both of you. But especially, this Rhythmic Arts Project and the children that you work with. And I've seen like the love that they give you and the love that you have for them. And it's just absolutely incredible. So thank you for that. Thank you for that. I got to stop the show. I'm sorry, we're at an hour, but Jimmy, thank you so much for coming by. It was really great to have you and see you. And I know that, you see, Eddie perked up. I wasn't enough for Eddie. I had to have somebody else.
You're enough, dear.
I'm just kidding. Thank you. Facebook, we're going to say goodbye. We'll have you back. There's so many stories to tell. We'll have to have you back.